Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Amy Smith, and I am a Vice President of our Effortless Experience programs here at Challenger. I'm so excited to be joined by Matt Dixon again, a founding partner of DCM Insights and also one of the authors of the Effortless Experience. And we're really excited to be talking about some insights about coaching today. It's a topic that we're super passionate about here at the Effortless Experience team. We're going to try really hard to stick to 30 minutes, but per usual, we've probably got about 75 minutes worth of content that we could get through. So I'm going to hand it over to Matt to take it away in just a moment. One quick housekeeping item is that we will stay on afterwards if you have any questions. And you can certainly send us questions through the chat as well during the webinar. Matt, you are up.
Thank you. And so all those caveats that Amy offered in the beginning about we're going to try our best. For those of you who know me, that's pointed at me, those comments, because sometimes I can go a little bit long. Amy knows this. So but we promise we're going to get through all the content in 30 minutes. I love the Effortless Experience webinar series we're doing because it is built for the busy practitioner, the busy executive. So I think it's a lot of information. It's going to be a bit like drinking from the fire hose. Definitely, if you have questions as we're going through the content, fire those up in the chat window. We've got the Effortless Experience team here who can address your questions in real time. And as Amy said, we will hang out for a bit after the call. We'll make sure that we are the last people to leave. So if you'd like to hang out, ask some questions, then by all means. And of course, please feel free to get in touch with us afterwards. Send us a LinkedIn message or an email, and let's keep the dialogue going. I'm so excited to talk about this topic of coaching, and I think it's one of these topics that, as a researcher, a student of customer experience and of customer service effectiveness for many years, and I think Amy and Whitney and the entire Effortless Experience team would agree with this. It's an evergreen topic. It is one of those things that it feels like we always need to be focused on, and is always important to do effectively. But I would argue that today, this moment in time we find ourselves in is a uniquely pressing moment for us to really start to double down and get serious about being really good at coaching and engaging our frontline through this really powerful development lever at our disposal that most of us, if we're honest, are not taking full advantage of. And we're going to talk more about that today. But why do we think that this is the time? This is the time to finally get serious about supervisor-led development, i.e. coaching effectiveness in the contact center? Well, I think there are a few reasons. The first one is, and I'm not telling anybody anything they don't know, in about 30 minutes, you're going to hop back to dealing with some pretty demanding customers. Our customers, especially right now, in this environment they're in, where we're still dealing with a ton of demand, a ton of volume. We're probably short on capacity to handle that volume. Our clients are not giving us any quarter. They're looking for faster, more personalized, more tailored, better, more effective resolution, despite the fact that we are dealing with probably a lot of open headcount, right? We're dealing with constrained resources and bandwidth on our end. Our clients don't give us any quarter, as I said before. They expect higher and better delivery, despite this really difficult environment. What does that mean? That means that life with these really demanding customers coming in with more complex issues, again, the easy stuff has gone away. They're self-serving on those issues. So what lands in the lap of the contact center professional, the frontline agent, is the more difficult issue, right? With a more demanding customer whose expectations are going up despite everything we're dealing with. A customer who's quite frustrated, right? Because they've had to wait on hold for a long time. They tried to self-serve. They couldn't self-serve on their issue. They called in. They were told that wait times are longer than normal, and they waited a long time to talk to a representative. And so now they're really amped up, and it puts our people in a really tough spot. It puts a lot of pressure on professionals who already have difficult jobs in customer service. What that means is that engagement is low, right? We're seeing people turn over, the Great Resignation. We're not going to add more to that fire. I think we are all well aware of what's going on out in the labor market. Our people are departing. They're opting out of our contact center, but they're opting out of contact center work in general. They're going off to do different things. And the ones who remain, that means more volume from more frustrated customers who are having to wait even longer to talk to somebody is landing in their laps. This just creates this perfect storm right now for companies, for supervisors, and for our frontline professionals. And so for all of these reasons, I would say that, if we haven't been serious about coaching effectiveness up until now, There's no time like the present to get serious. But I do think that, the reality is sometimes we don't fully appreciate the impact that coaching has. And it becomes one of those things that, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, we assume will just get done. And we assume it'll be done well. And we're going to show you that some of those assumptions can lead to some pretty bad outcomes. But first, let me paint the picture of why this is so important to do effectively. Now, we ran a study going back a number of years where we looked at various levers available to leaders to drive performance in the contact center. And one of the really stark findings that came out of this research is that when you look at driving staff productivity, right? Faster handle times and efficiency in the contact center, training is a great tool available to us, whether it's training our people on new call handling processes, new policies, new systems and tools available to them, new products even. Training is a fantastic resource, right? But when we look at improving the quality of the experience, which as we just talked about is really what we need to be doing more effectively, is deliver a more tailored, personalized, low effort experience to our customers, our increasingly frustrated and demanding customers. We're trying to improve the quality of that experience. When we look at quality, the difference in leverage that one gets from coaching effectiveness versus training is pretty stark. It turns out that unlike training, coaching is the lever that you pull when you're trying to boost it. Maybe training may be fine for productivity, but coaching is the lever you pull when it comes to improving the quality of the experience. Why is that? Well, it turns out that coaching, as you see on the left-hand side, it's experiential, it's immersive, it's tied to the actual behavior that is that the rep is engaging in with a customer. Training tends to be away from the job, right? It tends to be disconnected. It's not about this conversation with this customer about this issue. It's about a notional customer, about a figurative or imaginary role play type of situation. Again, it's disconnected from the experience. Coaching also allows for deeper exploration and self-discovery. Training tends to be more one way. We used to call it training kind of the sheep dip method. We take our representatives, we run them through a curriculum. Again, a fine approach if we're trying to get everyone trained up on a new product, if we're trying to bring them down the learning curve on a new policy, maybe there's a new compliance requirement. It's fantastic if we're trying to show them a change to the call handling process. And it's great if we're rolling out a new system or technology to teach our people how to use it. It's a one-to-many rote development experience, and it's fine for certain applications. But when we're trying to get our people to get better at the behaviors we know will lead to better customer experience, will lead to a low effort experience, things that we talk about in the Effortless experience, like getting better at advocacy, getting better at proactive guidance, getting better at using positive language, getting better at personalizing or tailoring the experience. The way you do that is not a one-to-many rote sheep dip kind of approach. It is a tailored coaching approach to development. So if we're trying to improve quality, which as we just talked about, we want to do, delivering a better quality experience is what we're all about. If we want to do that, we've got to coach our way to victory. Now, I'll tell you, coaching has what we call kind of a glorious ancillary benefit. It's not just good when it comes, it's not an effective and powerful lever when it comes to improving quality of the experience. It also improves the engagement of our front line. Let me show you what I mean. In some research that we ran over the years at CEB, and we looked at the different things that drive staff retention. What are the things that keep people engaged and motivated and wanting to stay and not join, the growing tide of the Great Resignation, right? What are the things that keep people motivated, engaged, and wanting to stay in their job, in their organization, plugged in with your customers and with your organization? Coaching is a really powerful lever. Obviously, the most powerful lever available to us is job opportunity, which is quite simply put, does this job help me accomplish my professional objectives, develop as a person? Do I have opportunities for advancement? That's what we mean by job opportunity. But many people assume, especially as staff are leaving and they're attriting, many people assume that things like pay are most important to our people to get them to stay. But it turns out coaching is actually more effective than I think what many of us assume is the primary lever for engagement or for engagement and retention. Pay is far more effective than that. Coaching builds a bond between the frontline professional and his or her supervisor, which is really powerful. It's motivate when done well. It's extremely motivational. It keeps our people engaged. It gets them to want to stay in their job. We do it for performance improvement. We do it to improve the quality of the experience, but the exhaust benefit, the glorious ancillary benefit, is that it keeps people around. It keeps them motivated and engaged. And we found this across various functions that we've studied over the years. Coaching is one of the most overlooked retention vehicles or levers available to us as leaders. So we like to say that coaching really represents a win-win-win for the organization. Our customers win because they get a better quality experience. When our people are coached effectively on the behaviors that lead to a low effort experience, our customers get a better experience, they win. The rep wins because they're able to deliver an easier experience. They're able to get a thank you from the customer instead of getting yelled at by the customer, because they understand the behaviors necessary to lower the effort of the experience. And it fosters a much better relationship and connection between the agent and the supervisor. So it's a win from the rep's perspective. And then obviously the company wins. Why? Better coaching means increased customer loyalty because our customers are getting better low effort experiences. It means fewer open seats, right? So it means not having to struggle with time to fill, open headcount, struggling to find those qualified candidates, because we're engaging and motivating the people we have and they're sticking around, right? Because they're getting the coaching that they know is going to make them more successful with customers, and that creates that great development bond with their managers, with their supervisors. So how do we do it? I think that's the really big question that we're going to talk about for the next 20 minutes or so. There are a lot of assumptions we find when we go out and we talk to call centers leaders, we talk to customer experience leaders. There are a lot of assumptions that people make with respect to what great coaching is and how to make it happen in the service organization. And we've kind of laid these out in kind of we call a path of 4 false assumptions. These are the things that get in the way of us taking a high-performing representative, somebody who's got the potential to be a great coach and be a great supervisor of others, a great developer of others, all the way to world-class coaching. There are 4 ways that this kind of journey goes sideways, built on 4 big assumptions that we tend to make as leaders that we're going to show you with data are all false assumptions, and that we need to be very aware of if we desire to deliver world-class coaching, which hopefully we've shown you now is the thing we should be focused on. So the first false assumption is that anybody who is good at doing the frontline agent job is naturally going to be a good people leader. Our research shows very, very clearly that that is not the case. So I just orient you to what you're looking at here. On the left-hand side, in a broad study we ran across frontline agents, we found that only 22% of them would raise their hand and say, yeah, you know what? My supervisor delivers really effective coaching. They are a very effective coach. They coach me on the behaviors known to lead to my success, to deliver that low effort experience to my customers. 78% of reps would not agree. And there's various flavors of that, right? My supervisor doesn't coach me at all, to they do deliver coaching, but it's actually bad coaching. And what happens when our supervisors deliver bad coaching? Well, look on the right-hand side. In many respects, good coaching, we already know, is transformational from a performance and engagement perspective. But what we may not have fully appreciated is that when it happens, and it happens poorly, and it's not done well, it produces a phenomenal amount of degradation in performance. So look at the impact on performance when we coach badly. I don't want to overstate the point here, but in many respects, we're better off doing nothing than delivering bad coaching. And this is really important because I think so many of us, if we think about the career path and we think about the way that we're going to keep our high-performing agents developing and progressing and wanting to stay with the organization, one of the obvious steps is get them from agent to supervisor, right? And we make this assumption that what made them a great agent is going to translate to being a great coach. Just because they were good at doing this themselves, they're going to be good at teaching others how to do this as well. And what this tells us very, very clearly is that most people, the vast majority of supervisors, of high-performing agents, if you will not figure this out on their own. They need our help. They need to be developed themselves. Coaching is like any other skill. Sure, some people are born with it, but most people learn to do it. They learn to do it through getting training and coaching themselves. As we'll talk about before, being rewarded and incentivized for doing it well and shown how they can improve. Now, a really important side note here, if you look at the bottom, a few years ago, we profiled a best practice from Avis Europe. They had built a program, they called it the Top Gun program. And we really like this. The reason we're calling it out here is it gives us a way to screen our high potential or high performing agents for who would be best equipped to be a good coach, to be a good supervisor. So they built a program, again, they called it the Top Gun program, and it was specifically designed for high performing agents. So it was a competitive process. And once you were in the Top Gun program, you received special training and coaching yourself on the skills necessary to become a supervisor, a big one of which was delivering effective coaching. Now, the way this program worked is that these folks became kind of the bench for when a supervisor position opened up. But they had an opportunity when a supervisor was perhaps out on leave, perhaps out on sick leave or maternity or paternity leave. They had a great opportunity to step in and fill in, which gave Avis an opportunity to observe in a safe way how these managers or supervisors in training performed. Now, the other great benefit of this, not only does it give us a chance to create kind of a farm system of supervisors, it gives us a chance to observe this. It creates a safe space for our high-performing agents to practice. Now, think about this for a moment. What happens when you take one of your best agents and you put them in a supervisor role and they completely bomb, they completely flame out, they deliver bad coaching? Well, what happens is you don't get the performance benefit you hope for, you create staff disengagement, and you create a degradation in performance, as you see from the data. Now, what ends up happening is you create bad outcomes for your customers, bad outcomes for the agents who are being managed by this ill-equipped supervisor, this new supervisor. And what you also have is a high-performing agent who's failed in a very visible and public way. And so the likelihood that they're going to slide back into an agent role is zero. They usually head for the exits at that point. So you've now lost one of your highest performing agents who didn't succeed as a supervisor. What if you could avoid that? And that's why Avis built this program, because again, it creates this supervisor in training opportunity. You're in the farm system. You're not kind of, if you do fail, if you do struggle, it gives us a way to course correct, see if you're cut out for this role, but the failure is not as high profile as if we promote you into the role and then you bomb at the role, right? So we love this as a screening mechanism to find out who is cut out for being a supervisor. But the point here is we've got to invest in the development of our folks when it comes to coaching. They will not figure this out on their own. This is not something that we just set up and set it and forget it. We've got to invest in the development of our people, our high-performing agents who we want to promote into the supervisory ranks, but also those existing supervisors. We need to continue to develop those skills because they won't figure it out on their own. Just what made them a great performing agent will not translate into making them a great performing coach by definition. The second thing that we tend to assume when it comes to coaching is that our supervisors will understand the difference between coaching and their other roles as leaders of people on the team. We ask our supervisors to wear many, many hats, right? We ask them to be performance managers. We ask them to run training sessions, to be mentors, knowledge disseminators. We ask them to be wellness monitors. Increasingly in this world of COVID and people working in hybrid work environments and having to work at home with kids and dogs and so on and so forth. We ask them to be business unit and internal stakeholder liaisons. We ask them to delegate responsibility, to be project managers, to oversee initiatives. And we also ask them to be coaches. So we put a lot on the supervisor's plate. And I think that many people, the assumption many make is that our supervisors will just naturally understand that coaching is different from some of the other things. And I'll tell you from our research, the thing that most supervisors, especially new supervisors, assume is that performance management, that hat up on the upper left, is the same as coaching. But to be very clear, there is a big difference between performance management, which is an absolutely critical job of the supervisor, and coaching. Performance management is outcome and metrics focused, right? It's about handle time, it's about resolution rates, it's about adherence, it's about these kinds of things that we care about and we measure and we track because it's important to our performance. It allows us to function effectively. And there is an important role the supervisor plays as performance management. Coaching is different. Coaching we define in the lower right, an ongoing and dynamic series of job-embedded interactions between a supervisor and a frontline agent designed to diagnose and correct or reinforce behaviors specific to that individual, right? That is not performance management. In many respects, it's agnostic of performance. It's distinct from performance. And what we find is that most supervisors, without knowing the difference, assume that they are one and the same. I'm sitting down having a performance management conversation. What the supervisor is thinking is, boy, I'm a great coach. I'm coaching my agent, but in fact, they're not delivering coaching, they're delivering performance management. So if we don't carefully distinguish between the two, and again, train and develop our supervisors so that they understand the difference, and when the time is right for performance management versus coaching, Again, they won't figure this out on their own. We have to help them see the difference. Third big assumption that we see a lot of companies make is that supervisors will inherently get the importance of coaching, and they are going to do it without needing to be measured or held accountable for doing it, right? And in many respects, rewarded for doing it. We've seen, I think, Amy will correct me on the numbers here, but I think we've probably seen more than 10,000 supervisor scorecards in our careers as researchers from all companies all around the world, across industry, across go-to-market model, geography, you name it. And what I'll tell you is that most of them look like what you see on the left-hand side. They are very metrics focused and very focused on tangible, measurable outcomes like adherence, like handle time, speed of answer, after call work, average, wrap up time, et cetera. QA checklists, things that can be measured. Are your agents using the approved greeting? Are they sticking to the script? Are they promoting certain new products? Are they, upsell, cross-sell rates, et cetera? Project completion. We asked you to drive this initiative. How did you do? Did we get to the outcomes that we were looking for? Almost every supervisor scorecard we have seen looks like what you see on the left-hand side. And I'm not saying that stuff is unimportant. We have to hold our own supervisors accountable for many of the metrics that we know are important for us to run an effective and efficient service organization. But what very few organizations do is they hold their supervisors accountable for what you see on the right. Are they performing integrated coaching? How did they do on the coaching survey? How engaged is their staff? Now, you might look at that stuff and you might think, boy, that stuff seems really fuzzy. How would you know? Well, the way you do this is by assessing your supervisors in the eyes of agents by using a coaching effectiveness survey. In fact, throw a comment in the chat if you'd be interested in talking to us about that. We have built a survey, and this is something that Challenger and the Effortless Experience team deploy for companies, which is great because it comes from a third party. It comes from the Effortless Experience team, not from you, which is more likely to get honest feedback from your agents. But it is built back from what we know statistically are the markers and the attributes of world-class coaching. And it asks agents in a very simple way to assess supervisors around those behaviors, around those competencies, around those skills. And that produces a very tangible outcome. That outcome can then be baked into a scorecard. It can be baked into a set of performance metrics and ultimately reward opportunities for our supervisors, holding them accountable for coaching in the same way we hold them accountable for adherence, handle time, after call work, et cetera. All the measurable stuff, suddenly we're taking something that feels fuzzy and we're making it just as measurable. There's an old adage in business, I think we all know this, you can't manage what you can't measure. And the same is true of coaching. Our supervisors on their own will not just go forth and coach. They will not just do it out of altruism because they know it's important. Some will understand the connection between what they do and the fact that people come into work, they're engaged, they're motivated, and they deliver a great experience. Some will figure that out. Most will not figure that out without us encouraging them to invest the time to get better at it. And we do that through measurement and through reward programs. Again, turning something that feels ambiguous like coaching into something that's actually quite tangible. The other thing I'll tell you is, you might wonder, what is a competency model or a framework? What are the competencies necessary to be great at this skill? That's another thing that Challenger's built out and refined over the years. So again, if you're interested in learning more about that, let us know. Happy to hop on a call, walk you through that coaching survey, walk you through the competency model as well, and really break it down to those tangible, measurable attributes that we can hold people accountable for. Now, the last thing, I think, especially in this day and age, we get so many questions about how do we do this well in a virtual or hybrid work environment? And I think there's this assumption out there that, well, they figured out how to do it on the floor in the contact center. And so I'm sure they'll figure out how to do it when agents are working from home, when they're sometimes in the office and sometimes at home. And I think that's a pretty dangerous assumption to make. What we find is that most supervisors, again, left to their own devices, kind of say, well, I don't know how to do this in a virtual work environment. I can't sidejack into calls and listen to my representative. I can't do the integrated coaching that we know from the research, and many of you know, is such an important part of getting coaching right. Remember, coaching is not just scheduled away from the floor, opportunities to sit down, calibrate, assess longitudinal performance, and then create a plan moving forward. Those are really important. We call that scheduled coaching, right? But we also know that integrated coaching is a key part of delivering coaching effectively in the flow of work, on the floor, quick pull-ups that last in some cases seconds, maybe a couple of minutes, that happen between calls, immediately after calls, that allow us to course correct and see how are we doing on those plans we agreed to during those scheduled coaching interactions. Where do we need to tack left or right in terms of what we work on the next call or across the rest of the afternoon. But supervisors, when people start working from home, assume, well, I can't do that anymore because I can't just walk the floor and hear what's going on and sidejack into a call and do those quick bursts of coaching. Sure, I knew how to do it on the floor, hard to do it when my reps are out of sight. But what we found is that with the support of the organization, with guidance from the organization, we can give our people the framework or the approach necessary to deliver that great integrated coaching despite not being on the floor. And we've kind of mapped out what this kind of conversation would sound like. And you might think, how would this even work in a virtual environment? Well, what we find is that best supervisors, again, with the guidance of their companies, are able to kind of bake in that integrated coaching despite not being live and present on the floor, shoulder to shoulder with their reps. And the way they do it is they might reach out. If you look at the left-hand side, hey, there's some things we agreed to in our last scheduled coaching interaction, things we're going to work on together. Love to observe you on a few calls so we can see how the progress you're making and where we need to course correct, what you need help on, and what you're really mastering and doing quite well. So in the second step, I've got some time set aside at 1 p.m. today to observe you on some calls, just as we talked about in our coaching session last week. I've got some time set today. I want to listen to you on a handful of calls, but here's what I'd like you to do. But instead of hopping back in the queue after I observe you, take yourself out of the queue. Reach out to me, give me a call. Let's hop on a Zoom. Let's hop on a Teams meeting, and let's just quickly debrief. What went well? What didn't go well? Think about your goals that we talked about when we had our coaching meeting and the objectives we set forward. And given how I heard you do, how do you think you did? How'd you handle those interactions? What did you do well? Where'd you miss the mark? What do you need help with moving forward? What might you do differently next time? So we can still do that integrated coaching, but just has to be done in a different way. And it's really important that we signal to our supervisors that just because people are not live and in the contact center, it doesn't take you off the hook for delivering the kind of coaching, which we know scheduled plus integrated is that killer combination. It doesn't take you off the hook from delivering that. We just need to think creatively about how we do it. And it can be done, again, with the guidance from the organization about how to do so. So 4 big assumptions that companies tend to make that get in the way from taking that high performing rep and delivering on the back end a world-class coach. We assume that just because they're a high performing rep, they're going to be a world-class coach. And the data shows very clearly some will figure it out, most will not. And if they deliver bad coaching, performance degradation is the result, as is disengagement, right? And high profile failures for what were otherwise high performing agents who we put in a position didn't set them up for success, and they flame out in a very public way, which usually leads to them walking out the doors. Second, we tend to assume people will know the difference between one thing and the other. And the two that are so proximate for the supervisor are performance management and coaching, and they couldn't be any different. We've got to create that separation in the supervisor's mind. How do we do it? By giving them a framework, teaching them what great coaching is and how it's different from performance management, how one uses performance management as a great supervisor to drive team performance and individual performance, but how one uses coaching to get our people to connect the dots between the behaviors we know will lead to successful outcomes and those ultimate outcomes. 2 distinct jobs. We've got to help our supervisors see the difference between those things. Third, we assume that they don't need incentives to do this well. We've got to measure them. We've got to deliver a coaching survey to our frontline, measure them, hold them accountable. We've got to understand how what our supervisors do ties to the ultimate objectives that we're looking for in the business. And we've got to measure them and reward them on that stuff. They won't do it out of altruism. They won't do it on their own. And then lastly, we can't take them off the hook when things get tough, when work goes hybrid or virtual. We've got to show them how to continue to do the things that we know are hallmarks of world-class coaching despite a changing work environment. So 4 assumptions that we tend to make. I'm going to hand it over to Amy. Amy, I told you I'd give you lots of time here, so I'm going to give you a whole minute to wrap things up. Take us home. Just summarize world-class coaching. How do we make it happen? And there's an opportunity for everybody here to get a sense of for what this looks like. I'll leave it to you to tell everyone about that.
Yeah, but I mean, I think the biggest thing, and we will send a follow-up document that kind of outlines these items, but I think the biggest thing is the first one, really taking the time to invest in your supervisors. I often say to clients that we have or prospects that we have that supervisors are the most underinvested in role in the contact center. And I get a lot of big head nods like, yes, you're right. We do just trust that they're going to figure it out. And if we invest in them, we show them what coaching actually is, and then we find ways to reinforce it. We build out those structures of accountability for good coaching, and we paint the picture for what coaching looks like and what it looks like in different environments. Then we truly do become that world-class coaching environment that we're looking for. Really quick advancement on the slides, Matt. The quick opportunity that we were talking about is that we're going to be doing a coaching workshop in July. It's going to be really interactive, and we have a limited number of spots where people can learn about our coaching framework. So if you're interested in attending, please just type into the chat more info or reach out to myself at amy.smith. I made my last name really easy for all of you at challengerinc.com. And we'll definitely reach out to you with some logistics and information, just a chance to learn a little bit more about what it will look like. And mainly, thank you everyone so much for attending. Like we said, we'll stay on for a few minutes if you do have questions. And have a great day.